There are two people in every room. They wear similar clothes. They studied similar subjects. Sometimes they even earned the same degree from the same place. On paper, they look equal. But when they speak, something strange happens. One voice disappears into the noise. The other voice stays. It lingers. It changes the atmosphere. Have you ever noticed that? Some people do not speak often. They do not raise their voice. They do not rush to prove anything. Yet the moment they speak, the room slows down. Phones stop moving. Eyes lift. Attention gathers. Their words feel heavier, not louder. Their presence feels solid, not dramatic. People trust them without being able to explain why. This video is not about perfect English. It is not about complex vocabulary, clever phrases, or sounding intellectual. It is about identity. It is about who you become the moment you open your mouth. Because in the real world, communication is not a soft skill. Communication is power. It decides who gets listened to and who gets overlooked. It shapes careers, opportunities, income, and influence. Long before people check your resume, they feel your presence. Long before they analyze your logic, they sense your confidence. Often, that judgment happens in seconds. By the end of this video, you will not just learn how leaders speak, you will understand how leaders think while they speak. You will start showing up differently, standing differently, pausing differently, choosing words with intention instead of habit. This is not about becoming louder. It is about becoming clearer, not about impressing others, but about being felt. When your communication changes, perception changes. And when perception changes, your position in the world changes with it. This shift is subtle, powerful, and permanent if you are willing to practice daily with discipline always. Say without saying. The power before words. Before you speak, your body has already spoken. It speaks through posture, through eye contact, through stillness, through the way you occupy space. Long before people hear your ideas, they feel your presence. This is not about judgment or fairness. It is biology. The human brain is designed to make fast decisions because for most of history, speed meant survival. Today, that same system decides whether you feel confident, trustworthy, or forgettable within seconds. Imagine two candidates waiting for an interview. Same education, same experience, same qualifications on paper. One is slouched in the chair, shoulders collapsed, eyes glued to a phone, movements restless and small. The other sits upright, shoulders relaxed, feet grounded, breathing slow. He is not trying to impress anyone. He is simply comfortable in his own space. Before a single question is asked, who feels like a leader? This is the power of nonverbal authority. Leadership does not begin with words. It begins with how you regulate your body. When your body is calm, your mind follows. When your movements are controlled, your message feels controlled. People trust what looks stable. Every room has an invisible hierarchy, and bodies speak that language fluently. Fast movements signal anxiety. Fidgeting signals uncertainty. Avoiding eye contact signals retreat. Stillness, on the other hand, signals confidence. Not arrogance, not aggression, just inner stability. When you walk into a room, slow down. Let your steps be deliberate. Rushed movement tells people you're chasing approval. Calm movement tells them you belong. Stand tall, not rigid, but open. Your spine communicates self-respect. Your shoulders communicate readiness. Lift your gaze, not to challenge, but to connect. Eye contact says, I am present. I am not hiding. Even silence is communication. A person who can pause without discomfort controls the emotional rhythm of the interaction. They are not pulled by the moment. They shape it. This is why the most powerful people often speak less. Their bodies do the work first. You do not need to feel confident to look confident. The body leads the emotion, not the other way around. When your heart is racing, slow your breath. When your thoughts scatter, ground your feet. These small adjustments send signals to your nervous system, and your nervous system sends signals to others. Remember this. Before people evaluate your words, they evaluate your presence. Before they trust your message, they trust your posture, your eyes, your stillness. Your body introduces you before your mouth does. Master this, and half of communication is already won. This skill is not decoration, it is foundation. You can learn techniques, scripts, and strategies, but without nonverbal control, they collapse under pressure. Authority is felt before it is understood. Train your body daily, not on stage, but in ordinary moments. How you sit, stand, wait, and listen becomes habit, and habit becomes presence. Presence is what people follow, even when no one explains why. It quietly determines leadership long before talent, titles, or permission ever enter the conversation itself. Young and soft, softly spoken female with American accent. The language of the human brain. Facts inform. Stories transform. You can tell people what is right, or you can show them why it matters, and the human brain will always choose the second path. Information speaks to logic, but stories speak to identity. Logic asks people to agree, stories invite people to belong. A story bypasses resistance. It does not argue or force. It slips quietly past the analytical mind and lands directly in emotion. This is why leaders do not rely on explanations alone. They narrate meaning. They wrap ideas inside experience because experience is how humans have learned since the beginning of time. Think about the lessons you remember most clearly from your life. They were not delivered as instructions, they were lived. They came from moments of struggle, moments of failure, moments of hope. A story recreates those moments for the listener. It allows them to feel without risk, to learn without pain. A powerful story does not need to be long. It needs structure. There's always a character, a challenge, and a change. A short struggle that creates tension, a clear desire that gives direction, a lesson that is earned through action, not claimed through opinion. This structure mirrors how the brain organizes memory, which is why stories are remembered while facts fade. When you speak in stories, people do not just hear you, they see images, they feel emotions, they recognize parts of themselves. The brain lights up in multiple regions at once, creating deeper neural connections. This is why stories stay while explanations disappear. Leaders use stories to make values visible. Instead of saying honesty is important, they tell a moment when honesty cost them something. Instead of saying persistence matters, they describe a night when quitting felt easier than continuing. These stories do not impress, they connect. Stories also create trust. When you share a real experience, you lower the distance between yourself and the listener. You stop being an authority above them and become a human beside them. That shift is powerful. People do not follow information, they follow people they relate to. This does not mean exaggeration or drama. The strongest stories are often simple, everyday moments told with clarity and truth. A mistake at work, a quiet failure, a small victory that changed direction. Authenticity gives the story weight. When telling a story, focus on clarity, not perfection. Remove unnecessary details, highlight emotion. Let the lesson emerge naturally instead of announcing it. Trust the listener to understand. The brain prefers discovery over instruction. Remember this: facts tell people what to think, stories teach people how to feel, and what people feel, they remember. When you master storytelling, your words stop being information and start becoming experience. That is when communication stops being heard and starts being felt. That is when your voice begins to carry influence beyond the moment it is spoken. Stories shape memory, identity, and belief, quietly guiding decisions long after conversations end, influencing behavior when logic alone has already faded completely. Empathy, the skill that creates safety. Most people do not listen to understand, they listen to reply. While someone is speaking, the mind is already preparing an answer, a defense, or a story of its own. This habit creates noise, not connection, and it quietly weakens every conversation we enter without awareness or emotional responsibility involved. Leaders do the opposite. They slow down their internal dialogue and turn their attention outward. Empathy begins the moment you suspend judgment and choose curiosity. Instead of asking, "How do I respond?" leaders ask a different question. What is this person actually experiencing right now beneath the surface, emotionally speaking? Empathy is not fixing. It is not advice, solutions, or quick reassurance. It is the ability to sit with another person's emotion without trying to control it. Feeling with someone requires patience, humility, and the strength to stay present without escaping discomfort, even when silence feels awkward or emotionally demanding. When someone feels understood, their nervous system relaxes, defenses drop, the need to perform disappears. Trust does not appear because you are smart or impressive. It appears because the other person senses safety. And safety is the foundation of every meaningful relationship: personal, professional, emotional, and even leadership-based connections. Often, the most powerful sentences are simple. "I see you. That makes sense. You are not alone." These words do not solve problems, but they solve isolation. They tell the other person they do not have to fight the moment by themselves or defend their feelings against your presence emotionally. Empathy requires listening with the whole body: eyes steady, posture open, phone out of reach, attention undivided. This level of presence communicates respect without a single sentence. It tells the speaker, "You matter enough for me to be fully here," and not mentally rehearsing my reply or planning escape routes. People follow those who make them feel safe, not small. They return to conversations where they felt accepted, not judged. Empathy expands others instead of shrinking them. And when people expand around you, influence grows naturally, without force or manipulation, pressure, control, persuasion tactics, or hidden agendas at play. In leadership, empathy is not weakness. It is emotional intelligence in action. It allows you to read the room, adjust your tone, and respond wisely. Leaders who lack empathy create fear. Leaders who practice empathy create loyalty, trust, openness, long-term commitment, and psychological safety across teams, cultures, and conversations. Empathy does not mean agreement. You can understand without surrendering boundaries. You can validate emotion without endorsing behavior. This balance is crucial. It allows firmness and compassion to coexist, creating communication that is both kind and strong, especially during conflict, feedback, negotiation, disagreement, and emotionally charged situations in real life. Practice empathy daily in small moments. Listen without interrupting. Reflect instead of reacting. Choose presence over performance. Over time, people will feel safer around you, and the person who creates safety becomes the person others trust, follow, and remember long after words fade and conversations end, shaping loyalty and respect. The sweetest sound, using names with intention. A name is not a label. It is identity. It carries memory, emotion, history, and belonging. When someone hears their name spoken with warmth, the brain responds differently. Attention sharpens, walls soften, a subtle sense of recognition appears, telling the person they matter in this moment. In a crowded world filled with noise, opinions, and constant self-promotion, remembering a name is rare. Saying it sincerely separates you immediately. It signals effort, care, and presence. It tells the other person you notice them, not just their function, title, or usefulness. That small signal carries enormous social weight. Most people want attention. Very few people offer it. The person who offers attention becomes magnetic. Using someone's name is one of the simplest ways to give attention without interrupting or demanding anything in return. It turns a transaction into a connection. A name is tied to identity. From childhood, it is the sound associated with safety, correction, encouragement, and love. Parents call it, teachers repeat it, friends shout it. Over time, the brain links that sound with self-image. When you use someone's name respectfully, you activate that entire emotional network. This is why leaders, mentors, and influential communicators use names intentionally, not excessively, not mechanically, naturally. At the beginning of a conversation, a name creates warmth. During a key point, it creates focus. At the end, it creates closure. Used correctly, it frames the entire interaction. There is an important distinction here. Using names is not manipulation. Manipulation feels strategic and empty. Intention feels human. The difference lies in tone and timing. When a name is used to acknowledge rather than control, it builds trust instead of suspicion. Think about the last time someone remembered your name without checking notes or being reminded. You likely felt respected, maybe even slightly surprised. That feeling lingers. People rarely remember exact words, but they remember moments of recognition. In professional settings, names cut through hierarchy. They soften authority without reducing it. In personal relationships, they reinforce closeness. In conversations with strangers, they create instant familiarity. The same word performs different functions, yet the effect remains consistent. It makes people feel seen. Be mindful. Do not overuse names. Repetition without meaning feels artificial. Say it when greeting. Say it when listening. Say it when thanking. Let it sound natural, not rehearsed. In a world competing for attention, recognition becomes power. When people feel seen, they relax. When they relax, they open. And when they open, trust forms. People do not forget how you made them feel recognized. That memory quietly shapes how they think about you long after the conversation ends. This practice costs nothing, yet returns influence. It works across cultures, industries, and situations because it respects something universal: identity. When you remember names, you remember people. When you remember people, you build reputation quietly. Over time, this habit compounds, turning ordinary conversations into meaningful relationships that open doors without force or self-promotion, and they last longer than clever words or impressive titles. Emotional intelligence. Respond, don't react. Powerful communicators are not emotionless. They are emotionally disciplined. They feel anger, fear, disappointment, and pressure just like everyone else, but they do not allow those emotions to hijack their behavior. This discipline is what separates influence from impulse and authority from noise. Anyone can react. Reaction is fast, automatic, and driven by emotion. It is the raised voice, the defensive sentence, the message sent too quickly. Leaders respond instead. Response requires awareness. It creates space between stimulus and action. In that space, power lives. A pause is not hesitation, it is control. When leaders pause, they breathe. When they breathe, their nervous system settles. And when the nervous system settles, clarity returns. This is why calm people feel powerful. They are not overwhelmed by the moment, they are directing it. Emotional intelligence begins with self-awareness. You notice what you are feeling before it leaks into your words. Anger is recognized, insecurity is named, fear is acknowledged. Naming emotion reduces its intensity. What is named can be managed. What is ignored takes control. Responding means choosing words that serve the long game, not the moment. Winning an argument can feel satisfying for seconds. Losing trust costs years. Leaders understand this trade-off intuitively. They do not sacrifice relationships for temporary relief. Under pressure, emotional discipline becomes visible. In meetings, when criticized publicly, reacting makes you look unstable. Responding calmly makes you look grounded. At home, during conflict, reacting escalates pain. Responding preserves dignity. The same principle applies everywhere. Staying calm under pressure is not weakness. It is dominance over chaos. Anyone can be loud. Anyone can explode. Very few can remain steady when provoked. That steadiness communicates confidence without explanation. People feel it instantly. Every pause is a decision point. You are deciding whether emotion leads or intention leads. You are deciding whether you shrink the room or expand it. And every decision shapes how people rank you, not consciously, but emotionally. Emotional intelligence also means reading others. You notice tone shifts, body language, silence. You adjust accordingly, not to manipulate, but to respond wisely. This sensitivity allows firmness without cruelty and compassion without surrender. Boundaries are strongest when delivered calmly. Explaining too much signals doubt. Anger signals loss of control. Calm repetition signals certainty. People may not like the boundary, but they respect the clarity. This skill must be practiced daily in small moments, in traffic, in emails, in disagreements. Pause, breathe, choose. Over time, response becomes habit. Habit becomes reputation. People trust those who are predictable under pressure. Emotional intelligence makes you predictable in the best way. Steady, fair, intentional. When storms rise, others look for stability, and stability always becomes leadership. This is how power compounds quietly, not through dominance, but through consistency. When people know you will not explode, withdraw, or attack, they relax around you. Relaxation creates openness. Openness creates cooperation, and cooperation is the highest form of influence in communication and leadership over time. Calm response builds authority, respect, trust, influence, credibility, and leadership. Echoing the art of being felt. When someone speaks, they are not only sharing information, they are searching for proof that they exist in your attention. Most people miss this. They hear words but miss meaning. They wait for pauses so they can speak again. Echoing changes that dynamic completely. Echoing is simple but powerful. You repeat a key word, phrase, or emotion the other person just used, gently and naturally. Stressed? 3 months? That sounds heavy. You are not adding opinions, you are not giving advice. You are holding up a mirror. This is not interruption. This is reflection. And reflection tells the brain one critical message: I am heard. The human nervous system is constantly scanning for safety. When someone feels unheard, their body tightens, their story becomes defensive or guarded. When they feel heard, the body relaxes, breathing slows, shoulders drop, trust begins. Echoing triggers this shift almost instantly. Why does this work so well? Because the brain is wired to seek validation before solution. When you echo, you validate experience without judgment. You are saying, I am with you in this moment. That alone often matters more than any advice you could offer. Echoing also slows conversations down in a healthy way. Instead of rushing toward conclusions, it creates space. That space allows the speaker to go deeper. Often, the first thing people say is not the real issue, it is the doorway. Echoing invites them to walk further inside. For example, someone says, I've been exhausted lately. If you reply with advice, you shut the door. If you echo, exhausted, the door opens wider. They continue. Yeah, I feel like no matter what I do, it's not enough. Now the real emotion appears. Without echoing, you would never reach it. This technique is powerful because it removes pressure. The speaker does not feel analyzed or fixed. They feel accompanied. And when people feel accompanied, they reveal more of themselves naturally. Echoing is especially effective in leadership, coaching, sales, and relationships. It disarms defensiveness. It lowers resistance. It turns conversations into collaborations instead of contests. People become willing partners instead of guarded opponents. Tone matters deeply. Echoing must sound curious, not mechanical, warm, not robotic. You are not repeating to manipulate. You are repeating to understand. A flat tone feels fake. A gentle tone feels human. You do not echo everything. Choose one word or emotion that carries weight. Let silence follow. Silence is part of the technique. It gives the other person permission to continue. When practiced consistently, echoing reshapes how people experience you. They feel calmer around you, more open, more respected. You become the person people talk to when things matter. This is influence without force. No persuasion, no dominance, just presence. When people feel heard, they trust. When they trust, they open. And when they open, real communication begins. Echoing trains you to listen differently, not for reply, but for meaning. Over time, this habit rewires your attention. You become less reactive and more attuned. Conversations deepen, relationships strengthen. Remember this, being heard is a human need. When you meet that need, you do not have to push. People move toward you willingly. That is the quiet power of echoing. Make your words breathe. A flat voice kills powerful ideas. Words that could inspire fall lifeless when delivered without variation, emotion, or rhythm. Your voice is not just a sound. It is an instrument that carries authority, intention, and emotional signal. Before people analyze what you say, they respond to how you say it. Tone tells them whether to lean in or tune out. Rhythm tells them whether something matters. Voice is nonverbal communication layered on top of language, and ignoring it weakens even the strongest message. Leaders understand this instinctively. They do not rush their words because speed signals anxiety. They pause because pauses create weight. A pause gives the listener time to absorb meaning and feel importance. When leaders slow down, their words feel deliberate. When they speed up, excitement rises naturally. This variation keeps attention alive. A voice that never changes becomes background noise. A voice that moves feels human, intentional, and confident. Voice modulation turns speech into experience rather than information. Pitch, pace, and pause are the three pillars of vocal authority. Pitch communicates emotion. A constantly high pitch feels nervous. A constantly low pitch feels dull. Leaders move between them with control. Pace controls energy. Speaking too fast overwhelms. Speaking too slow disengages. Leaders adjust speed to match meaning. Then there is silence. Silence is not empty space. It is emphasis. It signals confidence because only those who are comfortable hold silence without fear. Your voice also reflects your inner state. When you are tense, your voice tightens. When you are calm, it settles. This is why voice training is not just technical, it is emotional regulation. Breathing deeper lowers tone. Slowing speech calms the nervous system. Practicing pauses builds confidence under pressure. Over time, your voice becomes stable even in difficult conversations. Stability is what people trust. They may forget sentences, but they remember how your voice made them feel. Mastering voice modulation is a daily practice, not a performance trick. Read aloud slowly. Record yourself. Notice where your tone flattens or rushes. Practice pausing after important ideas. Let silence do the work. Over time, your words gain gravity. People listen longer. They interrupt less. Your presence expands without effort. A controlled voice signals leadership before content is judged. When your voice breathes, your message lives. And when your message lives, people follow not because they are forced, but because they feel something real and steady inside themselves. This skill separates speakers from leaders. Many have ideas, few can deliver them with weight. Voice modulation turns intention into impact. It aligns emotion, timing, and meaning. When mastered, it commands attention without demand. You do not chase the room comes to you. That is nonverbal authority in action. Train your voice like a muscle. Daily repetition builds strength, and strength in voice becomes strength in presence, shaping how others perceive you long before logic has time to speak. This presence influences decisions, trust, respect, and leadership outcomes across conversations, careers, and critical moments, everywhere, always. The broken record technique. Calm strength, you don't need to argue to be firm. In fact, the moment you start arguing, you often lose power. Arguing signals uncertainty. It suggests you are trying to convince rather than decide. Calm strength works differently. It does not raise its voice, it does not chase agreement, it stands still and repeats what matters. The broken record technique is simple, but it requires discipline. You state your boundary clearly. When challenged, you repeat it calmly. Not louder, not longer, just consistent. No over-explaining, no emotional spikes, no defensive stories, just repetition with steadiness. Most people struggle with boundaries because they confuse firmness with aggression. They believe being strong means being forceful. In reality, force creates resistance. Calm repetition creates acceptance. When you stay steady, the other person's nervous system eventually adapts. They realize there is nothing to push against. Confidence is quiet repetition. It is the same sentence delivered with the same tone again and again without irritation. This consistency communicates certainty. You are not asking permission. You are not negotiating your values. You are simply stating reality. People often over-explain because they want to be liked. They add reasons, excuses, and justifications, hoping to soften the boundary. Ironically, this weakens it. The more you explain, the more openings you create for debate. Calm repetition closes those openings. This technique works because it removes emotional fuel. Arguments thrive on emotion. When you do not react, the other person runs out of energy. They may test you once, twice, 3 times. Each time you respond the same way: calm, clear, unmoved. Eventually, pressure fades. The broken record technique is especially powerful in situations where manipulation or persistence is used: social pressure, workplace demands, personal boundaries. When you explain, you invite negotiation. When you repeat calmly, you signal finality. This is not stubbornness, it is self-respect. You are not attacking the other person, you are protecting your space. That distinction matters. Calm boundaries do not damage relationships. Emotional boundaries do. People respect those who stay steady under pressure. Even if they do not like your answer, they respect your clarity. Over time, this respect compounds. Others learn that pushing you is ineffective. They approach you more honestly. They negotiate more fairly. Your reputation becomes stability. The broken record technique also trains your nervous system. Each calm repetition reinforces inner control. You learn that discomfort passes. You learn that you do not need to justify your existence. This builds internal confidence that carries into every conversation. Practice this skill in small moments: declining invitations, saying no to extra work, restating limits. Start where stakes are low. Over time, your ability to stay calm strengthens. Remember, boundaries are not walls, they are guidelines for how others can interact with you. Calm repetition communicates those guidelines clearly. No drama, no hostility, just consistency. Strength does not always announce itself. Sometimes it simply repeats, and that quiet repetition becomes unshakable power. Humor, warmth without weakness. Humor softens walls, not jokes, not sarcasm. Real humor is lightness, humanity, and self-awareness expressed with timing and care. It does not attack, it does not impress, it invites. In moments of tension, humor changes emotional chemistry faster than logic ever could. A smile in a difficult moment signals confidence, not insecurity. It tells people you are comfortable with yourself and with uncertainty. That comfort relaxes others. Relaxed people listen. Defensive people resist. Humor moves people from defense to openness without forcing anything. This kind of humor is not about being funny. It is about being human. It shows that you understand the situation and are not threatened by it. When leaders use humor well, they lower anxiety without lowering standards. They create warmth without losing authority. Humor works because it restores proportion. Tension narrows perspective. Everything feels heavy and urgent. A gentle, humorous remark widens the lens. It reminds the brain that the situation is manageable. That reminder reduces stress hormones and opens space for cooperation. Self-awareness is the safest form of humor. Lightly acknowledging your own imperfections signals confidence. You are not hiding, you are not performing, you are present. This creates trust because people sense honesty instead of ego. Humor should never target others. Punching down creates fear. Punching sideways creates division. Punching up creates risk. The most reliable humor turns inward or towards shared experience. It says, "We are in this together." That feeling bonds people instantly. In professional settings, humor humanizes competence. Without warmth, competence feels distant. With warmth, it becomes approachable. People are more willing to ask questions, share ideas, and admit mistakes. That openness improves communication quality dramatically. Timing matters. Humor works best after tension is acknowledged, not ignored. If emotions are high, first show understanding. Then, when the room feels seen, humor can release pressure. Used too early, it feels dismissive. Used too late, it feels forced. Tone matters as much as content. Gentle humor is different from sarcasm. Sarcasm hides hostility behind cleverness. Gentle humor carries kindness. People can feel the difference immediately. People trust those who feel human. Perfect speakers feel distant. Polished words without warmth feel cold. Humor adds texture. It reminds others that you are real, imperfect, and approachable, while still capable and grounded. When used with intention, humor becomes social validation. It signals safety. It invites connection. It makes people remember you positively, not because you were entertaining, but because you made the moment lighter. Practice humor by noticing the ordinary, small observations, shared struggles, quiet irony. Do not force it. Let it emerge naturally from presence. When humor flows from awareness, it strengthens connection without weakening authority. Warmth and strength are not opposites. Humor proves they can exist together, and when they do, people relax, trust, and follow willingly. This balance turns everyday conversations into moments of influence that feel safe, respectful, memorable, and sustainable over time, allowing relationships to grow without pressure, manipulation, or the constant need to prove personal value consistently always. Vulnerability, the ultimate authority. Perfection impresses briefly. It creates distance. It signals polish, control, and success, but it rarely creates connection. Honesty, on the other hand, connects deeply. It reaches places perfection cannot reach. It speaks to shared struggle, fear, and resilience, which are universal human experiences. Leaders are not superheroes. They are survivors with lessons. They are people who have failed, doubted themselves, felt lost, and continued anyway. What gives them authority is not the absence of weakness, but the willingness to face it, learn from it, and speak about it with clarity and purpose. When you share struggle with meaning, you give others permission to breathe. You tell them they do not have to pretend. They do not have to be flawless to be worthy. That permission creates relief. Relief creates trust. Trust creates influence. Vulnerability is not oversharing. It is not unloading emotions without structure. It is truth with purpose. It is choosing the right moment, the right story, and the right lesson. It is sharing enough to connect, not so much that the focus shifts away from meaning. A vulnerable story always has direction. There is a moment of difficulty, a moment of reflection, and a moment of growth. The pain is acknowledged, but it does not dominate. The lesson leads. This balance transforms vulnerability from weakness into strength. People sense authenticity immediately. Forced confidence feels hollow. Manufactured perfection feels distant. Vulnerability feels real. When someone speaks honestly about their journey, listeners lean in. They recognize themselves. They feel less alone. This is why vulnerability carries authority. It is rare. Most people hide. Most people protect image. When someone chooses courage instead, it stands out. Courage signals inner security. Only those who feel grounded can afford to be open. Vulnerability also strengthens leadership. Teams trust leaders who admit mistakes. Relationships deepen when people share fears. Communication becomes human instead of transactional. Walls fall. Collaboration rises. There is discipline in vulnerability. You do not share to seek sympathy. You share to offer clarity. You focus on what was learned, not only what was lost. You show movement, not stagnation. This keeps vulnerability empowering instead of draining. People do not follow perfection. They follow courage. Courage to speak truth. Courage to be seen. Courage to remain standing after falling. That courage inspires more than flawless performance ever could. Practice vulnerability intentionally. Reflect on moments that shaped you. Identify the lessons they taught. Share them calmly, without drama. Let your voice remain steady. Let your message carry hope. When vulnerability is used with wisdom, it becomes the ultimate authority. It turns communication into connection. It turns listeners into allies. It reminds everyone that strength is not about never breaking, but about breaking honestly and continuing forward with clarity and purpose intact. You don't need better English. You need clearer presence. You don't need to talk more. You need to mean more when you speak. Communication is not about sounding smart. It is about making others feel understood, respected, and safe. Everything you practiced in this video is not a trick. It is a shift from reacting to choosing, from filling silence to holding it, from trying to impress to allowing yourself to be felt. Practice these skills not to perform, but to become. Become calmer under pressure. Become clearer in intention. Become steadier in presence. Because people respond first to who you are, and only later to what you say. The moment your communication changes, your identity shifts. And when identity shifts, behavior follows. Posture changes, tone changes, decisions slow down, confidence stops being forced and starts becoming natural. This is how leaders are recognized without titles. This is how trust is built without persuasion. This is how influence grows quietly over time. You will notice something subtle. People listen longer, interrupt less, lean in more. Conversations feel lighter but deeper. Not because you dominate, but because you create safety. Speak calmly, especially when emotion rises. Speak clearly, especially when things feel uncertain. Speak with heart, especially when it would be easier to hide behind distance. You do not need permission to lead your communication. You begin now, in ordinary moments, in how you listen, in how you pause, in how you choose your words. The world is already listening, not for perfection, for presence, not for noise, for clarity. When you speak from who you are becoming, people will feel it, and once they feel it, they will never hear you the same way again. That shift becomes your quiet signature, shaping respect, trust, and opportunity everywhere daily.